We sing when our team's winning. We sing to celebrate. We sing to quiet anxious fears in the darkness. We sing to remember, to feel and to process. We sing to imagine and to dream. We sing to add our voice to something bigger than ourselves. The Songs of Ascent in the Book of Psalms gives us a snapshot of a people who are walking together, living life and loving God. They show us what it means to sing out of where we are, from the battles of the valley to the wonders of the mountaintop, and every brave step along the way. They remind us that we're not journeying alone, and they invite us to sing our own songs for the road.
We are wrapping up our series today. We've been looking at Songs for the Road, and we have reached the end of the road. I feel like there's probably a song in there I could sing for you, but having witnessed my performance in Tinsel already, I don't think you need any more of that. So it's really funny, like, I love what Jem shared as well, like how it's fitting at the end of the year that we would come to a series where we're thinking about being at the end of the road. But actually what's exciting about today and where we're going to get to is that this isn't an end, it's a beginning. And actually that's true of this time of year as well. Like liturgically, Advent is the start of the church year. And you know, when we think about the new day, it starts at midnight, doesn't it? It starts in the night. Many John Mark Macmillan fans out there will know this. But actually that what God's doing begins often in the quiet, in the dark, in the cold, isn't necessarily, you know, when we see that beautiful dawn in spring where life bursts forward and it's hot and it's warm and things are coming and we think, oh yes, a new day has dawned. Like actually it's already dawned. It's already begun. And I feel like the invitation from God is to recognize that he's starting something. He's birthing something new in us, and we might not be able to see it. We might not have a clue what it's going to look like, but we receive it in faith. And so as we think about endings this morning and the end of the journey that the Israelites were on, actually we're thinking about what's next as well. And so we've been following the Israelites as they make their journey through Israel to Jerusalem, where they would go regularly to worship. And we've been thinking about what it means to be a community on a pilgrimage. A community that is living a life upward towards God. You know, we've been looking at the Psalms of Ascent, those songs that were sung as the pilgrims, as the Israelites went upwards towards Jerusalem to offer their offerings to the Lord. And basically, it's been a real metaphor for us, hasn't it, for how we live life with Jesus, how we go through the ups and the downs, but actually always on that road that is pointing towards God. And so, just thinking a little bit about like destinations. Like there's so much, isn't there, that we're often going for or hoping for or working towards. And I don't know about you, but it's not uncommon that we find that the thing that is waiting for us at the end of the road maybe isn't quite everything we hoped it would be. There's that Jim Carrey quote, I don't know if you've ever heard it, you know, he says, I would think everyone should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see it's not the answer. I was thinking about my sort of experience of this in its most acute form was probably to do with fantasy football. I don't know if I've got any fantasy football fans out there, but fantasy NFL in particular, just the way the game's set up, it's quite involving. You have to put quite a lot of effort in if you want to do well. You have to know what the players are doing, know who's injured, who isn't. There's quite a lot of effort going into trading with other people in your group. And so I used to love it. You know, you get a notification when you sent a trade offer, and usually it'd be rejected, but occasionally you get one through. It's like accepted. It's like, yes, I've made a trade. And it, like, honestly, for about 3 months of the year, I would give about an hour a day to my fantasy football team. And there was one year that I was doing really well, and I'd got to the final, and obviously because it's America, there's a lot of stuff happening late at night, and it was this time of year, I think, it probably would have been the final weekend, and I was in the lead, but there was one of my players still to play, and so I didn't want to stay up and watch the game because it was like 3 a.m. and I didn't want to wake Laura up, but I was lying in my bed, refreshing my fantasy football app, looking at numbers on a screen until eventually, probably about 4 a.m., the game finished and I had won my fantasy league. And as I lay there in my bed at 4 a.m., I was just like, was this really worth it? Probably not. And I haven't played fantasy football since then. But so often there's those things that we put so much effort into and just like, oh, what's it going to be worth? What's actually at the end of it? What am I going to find? Is it going to be an emptiness? And actually there's so much evidence, isn't there, of things that are way more meaningful than fantasy football that people actually get to and achieve. And you're like, oh, you know what, when I've got it, just feels a bit empty. And so I guess the question for the Israelites and the question for us as we come to the end of this series is, what is waiting for us at the end of the road? Will it be worth it? Will it satisfy? So let's read Psalm 134. It's nice and short. It should be up on the screen, I think. Now bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord, who stand in the Lord's house at night. Lift up your hands in the holy place and bless the Lord. May the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. Now bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord who stand in the Lord's house at night. Lift up your hands in the holy place and bless the Lord. May the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. So the Israelites have been on their journey. They've come through the dangers of the day and of the night. They've come through suffering and pain. They've come through times of joy and excitement. They've looked forward with anticipation to God's presence. And as they reach the end of the road, they say, bless the Lord, all the servants of the Lord. Lift up your hands, bless the Lord. May the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. Bless you. Bless, that's the word we get. It's the word that just leaps out of this psalm, isn't it? It's the Hebrew word baraka, to praise, to speak well of, to bless. And actually this journey that began in Psalm 120, where the Israelites were stood at the crossroads, it was David that wrote that psalm, I believe, and he said, actually, these people are for war, but I'm for peace. A journey that starts with repentance, where we go, there's a way of the world and there's a way of the Lord, and I'm choosing the Lord's way. That repentance, that choosing him, that journey ends with praise. As you reach the holy city, it ends with praise. And actually, the final destination of all of our pilgrimages is to be in the holy place, praising God. But what about, what does this word blessing mean? So we get sort of this two-part thing here. We've been blessed by God, and we're also blessing God. And actually, there's this idea that there's a couple of different types of blessing, but I'm just getting ahead of myself, sorry. First thing, that we're going to start at verse 3. May the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. May the Lord, maker of heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. So first of all, isn't this nuts? That actually at the end of our journey, we find that the maker of heaven and earth, the Lord God Almighty, Yahweh, who is above all other gods, he blesses us. That's what we find at the end of the road, that God blesses us. And apparently according to Eugene Peterson, there's two words for blessing in Hebrew. Baraka, which is the one we've got, and Ashra, or Ashrei, I don't know how you pronounce it. And that first one is, that's the kind of blessing that is like having it all together. It's the blessing in Psalm 1, like how great is it for the person who's planted in the house of the Lord. It's that sort of everything's working out all right. Whereas Baraka is actually, it's describing a bit more the sort of the vitality of God, like his presence, his goodness, and actually it's him sharing that with us. It describes his activity amongst us. That actually God in all of his fullness and all of his goodness, as we've been singing, he stoops down and he shares himself with us. That's the kind of blessing that we're talking about here, that God comes to us. It's the kind of blessing that we read about in 1 John 4:19, like we love because God first loved us. We hear about it in John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave. Like it all starts with him in all his fullness and all his goodness, the maker of heaven and earth, everything about him. He wants to share that with us. He wants to come and be with us. It's what we're celebrating at Advent, isn't it? That Christ dwelt amongst us. The Word became flesh. And because of God's activity towards us, because God blesses us, we can then bless him. Because we receive from God, we can give back to him. Because we're loved by God, we can love him, we can love other people. The life of blessing that we're invited into isn't one that we drum up, it's one that we receive. But because we're blessed by God, we can now bless him. So verse 1 and 2 again. Now bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord. Because you've been blessed, you can bless God. And there's two things in this. There's both an invitation and a command. The invitation is just for everyone that's been on that journey. Who knows what it's looked like. Through the Psalms that we've read, we've recognized that actually it's going to be a tricky journey physically. It's going to be hot. There's going to be dangers. There's going to be all sorts. And so the message here is that, however you find yourself as you arrive at Jerusalem, maybe you're coming in, singing and dancing, full of hope and life. Maybe you're crawling your way over the finish line. Maybe you fell out with your family. Maybe you argue with them every single day. Maybe you lost your kids. Maybe they just reappeared. Whatever state you find yourself in, you come to Jerusalem and you are invited. Now bless the Lord. Now that you're here, whatever it looked like, whatever it took, come and bless God. Come and bless God. And that's the invitation that we all have because of Jesus. Whatever the road has looked like, whatever we've experienced, whatever we've done, whether it's been hard, whether it's been confusing, come to Jesus. Come to me, all who are weary, he said. Come to me, all who are heavy laden, I will give you rest. There's an invitation for every single one of us that ultimately we can come to know him. But there's also a command. David's, or the psalmist, is speaking quite specifically to a group here. All you servants of the Lord who stand in the Lord's house at night. So these would have been the Levites, probably on the night shift, that would have actually had to go into the temple and offer their sacrifices. And there's a thing here about, actually maybe you've got to the end of the road. You made it to Jerusalem. Cool. Maybe you've done this 20 times before. And actually you just want to go and chill out. You just want to go and have a look around the city. Maybe you come from a little provincial place, and actually, okay, right, we've done the journey. We're here. Let's just relax. But actually, there's a command here. It's like, no. Now that we're here, now that you have arrived, now it's time to bless the Lord. You know what? You might be tired. It might be the middle of the night, but for you Levites, this is part of the deal. Now it's time to bless God. And actually, I don't want to get into the distinctions between like professional and unprofessional worship or whatever, but just there's that sense of, I love kind of two sides of the same coin. There is this open invitation for every single one of us. Whatever's going on, come and bless God. But actually, there's a bit of a challenge as well. Hey, you bless God. The maker of heaven and earth is blessing you. He is with you. He loves you. There's no one like him. And he's created you to worship him. And what I think the invitation here isn't to feel sort of condemned, but actually to recognize that we might feel a certain way about things for all sorts of reasons, most of them probably quite justified. But actually our feelings aren't the most important thing. Our feelings don't run the show. Feelings are really important. Like actually, I feel like something God's doing with me at the moment is helping me like reconnect to my feelings and learning how to feel my feelings fully. So I'm not saying we ignore them, but there's a reality when it comes to worship, when it comes to serving God, where actually our feelings don't run the show. There's a choice. We have a choice. And there's this quote from a guy called Eric Thoenis, which I'm going to throw up there. It's a little bit wordy, but I love it. There's this idea that to live out of conformity, and I think he means outside, so not in conformity. Outside of conformity with how I feel is hypocrisy. But that's a wrong definition of hypocrisy. To live out of conformity with what I believe is hypocrisy. To live in conformity with what I believe, in spite of what I feel, isn't hypocrisy, it's integrity. So we feel like, oh, I feel like this, therefore if I act on it, I'm just being a massive hypocrite because I actually don't fancy it. I've come to church today and I feel rubbish. And so if I were to lift my hands in the air, that's just me being a big hypocrite because I don't feel it. He's like, no, it's actually the opposite. You doing it because you believe it, even though you don't feel it, that's integrity. That's every part of you pointing in the same direction. Actually, we don't deny our feelings, we don't ignore them, we don't pretend they're not there, but actually there's a choice that there's something bigger than what I'm going through. And so I want to choose to offer that as worship to God. So we've got an invitation and a command. And so I mentioned we're at the end of the road, but we're just at the start, because actually, whilst this psalm tells us that at the end of the journey there is a blessing, also we know that we don't have to wait until the end of the road to start to experience that. Jesus is coming again. That's part of what we recognize at Advent, that Christ has come, Christ will come again. But the kingdom is at hand already. The kingdom is at hand. It's a now and a not yet. And Jesus is the ultimate destination. But he's also the way. He's also the truth. He's also the life. And so, as we leave this pilgrimage that we've been on with the Israelites, actually the invitation is the thing that is waiting for you at the end, to be blessed by God and to bless him in return, actually is yours to experience every step of the way. There's a famous question from the Westminster Catechism that says, the question is, what is the chief end of man? What's the chief purpose of humanity? Man's chief end, woman's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Ultimately, when we all boil it down, the whole point of this is for us to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Enjoy him. There's so many different aspects of discipleship, that we might suffer for God, that we might witness for him, that we might be obedient, that we might love him, we might love people. All this, there's a lot of stuff that requires quite a lot of effort. But actually, the whole point, the chief end, is for us to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Because ultimately, that's what we were created for. That God's put eternity inside all of us. He set a longing in all of us for him, for his kingdom. And actually the reason why all those pursuits, not including fantasy football, but the things that are so meaningful, that we just get them and they're just like, oh yeah, cool, is because ultimately we were created to know God. That is the thing that will fully satisfy us. That is where there is fullness of joy. And it's a deep joy. It's a deep joy. It's not a joy that is sentiment. It's not a joy that is wishful thinking or positive mindset. It's a joy that is tested in the fire. It's a joy that has come through suffering, through the trials of the day and the terrors of night. It's joy that's meaningful, and actually not. We don't have to ignore those things, but in the midst of them, because God is God and he's with us, the maker of heaven and earth is blessing us, we can be joyful. We can know him. And so we're going to go back into worship. So the band want to come back up. And as well, prayer team. We may need some additional prayer team this morning. So if you have done prayer training, if you're a small group leader and would like to pray, I'd love to invite you to come and be on the prayer team. If you just sort of make yourselves available over there shortly, that'd be amazing. But I want to read another psalm out, because I just feel like I'm not trying to say, oh, let's just all be happy about everything all the time, because there's loads of stuff that is really tricky. And actually, one of the things that I find most moving is in a room like this, just looking around and knowing the stories, knowing what's going on, and knowing actually how much it costs to even be sat on a seat in this room for so many people. And God really sees that, and God really honors it and really loves it. But I just feel like there's an invitation for us to step deeper into joy, because the world needs it. The world needs people who know their Father in heaven. Creation is longing for the sons and daughters of God to be revealed. And so I think, and actually that's what we were created for. That's what God wants for us. Like, he loves all the stuff. He loves all the effort. He loves the dreams, the desires, the projects, all those things. He birthed those things, but he wants us to enjoy him. He wants us to enjoy him, to glorify him. And in that kind of exchange where we see his face and we experience him, we give love back to him, and it just grows and it grows and it grows. And I just feel like there is both an invitation and a challenge to all of us to be more joyful. And where better than to do it at Christmas time? So I'm going to read this psalm. Why don't you stand up? Listen to this. Psalm 16. Lord, you are my portion, my cup of blessing. You hold my future. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. I will bless the Lord who counsels me. Even at night when my thoughts trouble me, I always let the Lord guide me because he is at my right hand. I will not be shaken. Therefore, my heart is glad. My whole being rejoices. My body also rests securely. For you will not abandon me to Sheol. You will not allow your faithful one to see decay. You reveal the path of life to me. In your presence is abundant joy. At your right hand are eternal pleasures. You reveal the path of life to me. In your presence is abundant joy. At your right hand there are eternal pleasures. There's no one like God. There's no one better than him. Who has it better than us that the maker of heaven and earth is our friend? He blesses us. That all of us may come. All of us may know him. He reveals the path of life. He reveals abundant joy. He reveals eternal pleasure. So my encouragement to all of us is to enjoy it. So let's praise. Let's worship God.